Hungarian Folk Tales. A fox seeks shelter. Once upon a time, there lived a wily fox. The old fox was hungry, and so he took a sack and left his home. He walked and walked until the sky grew dark, and he stood outside the house of a rich farmer. He knocked hard on the door, and when asked who was there, he replied, "I'm a poor traveller in need of shelter for the night. Will you take pity on me?" The rich farmer had a good heart, and so did his wife. They let the fox come in and offered him supper. "Kind sir, are there no thieves around the house? I have a fine fat cockerel in my sack, and I wouldn't like to have it taken in the night." "Worry not, Mr. Fox. Nothing has been stolen in my house. You can sleep in peace." "Oh, poor me, my fine fat cockerel has been stolen." They all searched high and low, but no one could find the cockerel anywhere. The rich farmer was so ashamed that a guest of his had been robbed, and he felt sorry for the old fox as it wailed and moaned. But what could he do? He gave the fox a fine fat cockerel of his own and wished him well. So the fox left with a grateful grin on his whiskered face. He walked and walked until the sky grew dark and knocked hard on the door of a second farm. Good people lived in this house, and he was welcomed once more. As they were about to go to bed, the fox began to scour the room as if searching for thieves. "Kind sir, let me tell you that I have a fine fat goose in my sack, and I wouldn't like it to be stolen in the night." "Worry not, Mr. Fox. Nothing has been stolen in my house. You can sleep in peace." The fox waited for these fine folk to fall asleep, and he opened the sack. And what was in the sack? Why, the cockerel, of course. He took the fat fowl out and ate it all up, feathers and all. "Oh, poor me, my fine fat goose has been stolen." They all searched high and low, but no one could find the goose anywhere. The farmer then gave the old fox a fine fat goose of his own to stop him crying and moaning so. He walked and walked until the sky grew dark, and he stood outside a third house. He knocked again, was let in again, but before they went to bed, he turned to the farmer and said, "I've put my sack here under the bench, kind sir, but I can't rest in my bed because I should tell you, kind sir, that I have got a fine fat piglet in it." "You can sleep in peace, Mr. Fox," the farmer assured him. "No matter what is in your sack, there will be no trouble here." "Oh, poor me, my fine fat piglet has been stolen." They all searched high and low, but no one could find the piglet anywhere. What else could the farmer do but give the fox a fine fat piglet of his own? When the sky grew dark that night, the fox knocked at another door. They let him in, and again he said the same before they went to sleep. "Kind sir, please look out for thieves this night, for I have a fine fat pig in my sack, and I wouldn't like it to be stolen." The farmer glanced at the sack and saw that it had no fine fat pig inside, and knew from its squeals that it was only a piglet. But the wily fox didn't go to sleep. He ate the piglet up, curly tail and all. As soon as the sun rose, the fox began to moan, "Oh, poor me, my fine fat pig has been stolen." The farmer immediately saw the trick and pretended to feel sorry for the old fox. "Don't be so sad, and don't wake the village with your moaning. I'll give you 2 fat pigs instead of 1. Give me your sack so I can put them into it outside." The master went outside with the sack. He had 2 hungry foxhounds. He put them into the fox's sack, tied it up, gave it to the fox, and wished him well. When the wily old fox opened the sack, he saw no pigs. And what should jump out of the sack but the 2 hungry foxhounds? The fox ran as fast as his red legs could carry him. He forgot about his belly and wanted to save his furry hide. But the hungry foxhounds caught hold of his tail and tore him to shreds. If they hadn't, my story would never end. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Pork Pudding. Once upon a time, there lived a man who had a pig. The pig grew very big and fat, so the man decided to slaughter it for food. By the time spring came, the man and his family had eaten everything but the pork pudding. One day, the man went to tend his vines while his wife and 3 daughters stayed at home to cook supper. The wife told the eldest daughter, "Go up into the attic and fetch the pork pudding, my girl, and we'll cook it for your father's supper." The eldest girl did as she was told and was about to cut the pork pudding down when it spoke to her. "What do you want? You won't eat me, because I'll eat you first." And with these words, it ate the girl up. The wife could not imagine why her daughter had not come back down with the pork pudding. So she sent the second eldest daughter up to the attic to fetch it. But the fat pork pudding ate the second daughter up as well. So the wife sent the youngest girl up to fetch the pork pudding. But the youngest daughter did no better than her sisters, and the bulging pork pudding ate her up too. The wife could not imagine what had happened to her 3 darling daughters. "Well, I shall see for myself," she said, and went up into the roof. When she saw the size of the enormous pork pudding, she was pleased. But when she tried to cut the pork pudding down, it ate her up in a single mouthful. That evening, the man returned home from his vines to find no one at home to cook his supper. There was no supper on the stove and not even a fire inside it. The man searched high and low for his wife and 3 daughters. He realized that he would go hungry, so he went up to the attic to fetch the pork pudding to eat for his supper. But when the man got up into the attic and tried to cut the round pork pudding down, it shouted at him like it had at the others, "You won't eat me, I'll eat you first." And without any ado, the pork pudding ate the man up. By now, the heavy pork pudding was so weighty that the string could no longer hold it. It fell from the beam, rolled down the ladder, onto the porch, and out into the garden. The little house was on a big hill, so the gigantic pork pudding rolled all the way down the street. The local folks were just coming back from the fields, and the massive pork pudding ate them all up. The roly-poly pork pudding met a herd of pigs at the edge of the village, being led by a swineherd eating bacon with a pocket knife. The preposterously large pork pudding ate all the pigs up, and then the swineherd too. But the pocket knife was open, and the swineherd cut his way out of the pork pudding, and everybody followed him out into the sunshine. If that pork pudding had not split as it did, my story would have never ended. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Pussycat Princess. Once upon a time, there lived a king, and the king had 3 sons. All 3 princes were of marrying age, and so their father told them to find themselves wives. He threw 3 sticks in the air, 1 for each son, and said, "Wherever your stick falls is where you find your bride." The eldest son's stick fell towards a young baroness. The middle son's stick fell towards a young countess, while the youngest son's stick fell towards the dark forest. The young men all left the palace, but the youngest one was very sad. He had no idea how he would find a bride in the thick forest. And as he was walking in the forest, he met a small pussycat that walked behind him. The young prince spoke to the pussycat and said, "My royal father told me to travel to these parts where I would find my bride, but I can't see a girl anywhere near. Don't worry, I will marry you." The prince could not return home until he promised to marry the pussycat. The other princes had already arrived back, and their father asked them each what they thought of their bride. The eldest one said that he found a baroness, and the middle son said that he found a countess, while the youngest one asked them to wait and see. Then the king ordered all the 3 grooms to fetch a beautiful bouquet from their beloved. The 2 elder ones went happily, but the youngest one was very sad. When he reached the edge of the forest, the pussycat was already waiting for him. "My dear betrothed, you look so unhappy. Tell me, why are you so sad?" "How wouldn't I be sad when my royal father has ordered us all to bring a bouquet from our fiancés? Now what could I bring from a pussycat?" "Don't worry, just lie down and take a rest." Then the pussycat scratched a tree, and many more pussycats appeared. One of them brought silver flowers, another golden flowers, and a third brought diamond flowers. and the bride arranged them all in a beautiful bouquet. The other two princes were already at home when the young prince arrived late. The king said that the bouquets were truly beautiful, but the most beautiful of all belonged to the youngest son. They all asked him to tell the name of his bride-to-be, but he asked them to wait and see. Days passed and soon became a week when the king ordered his sons to go to their brides and fetch a handkerchief each. The young princes all left, but the youngest one was very sad. By the time he reached the edge of the forest, the pussycat was already waiting for him. "My dear betrothed, you look so unhappy. Tell me, why are you so sad?" "How wouldn't I be sad when my royal father has ordered us all to bring a handkerchief from our fiancés, but a pussycat cannot weave." "Don't worry, just lie down and take a rest." The pussycat scratched the tree, and once again more pussycats appeared. One brought silver yarn, another brought golden yarn, and a third gave diamond yarn, and the pussycat bride wove them together. When he arrived at the palace, the king inspected all three handkerchiefs. He told the eldest boys that theirs were quite pretty, but he told the youngest son that his was the prettiest of all. Weeks passed and soon became a month when the king told his sons to bring their fiancés to the palace. The two elder boys went happily for their spouses, while the youngest one became sadder than ever before. How could he possibly take the pussycat home? His pussycat bride was already waiting for him at the edge of the forest. "My dear betrothed, you look so unhappy. Tell me, why are you so sad?" "How wouldn't I be sad when my royal father has ordered us all to fetch our brides? Now how can I present a pussycat at the palace?" "Don't worry, just lie down and take a rest." The youngest prince thought he would never sleep, but at last he succumbed and fell into a slumber. When he awoke, he was very worried, but the young princess told him it was she in the guise of a pussycat whom he had betrothed, but she had been under a curse to live like that until a young man asked for her hand in marriage. "I was a pussycat, and you asked me to marry you, so I turned back into a princess." A wonderful coach awaited them, with proud coachmen and fine horses, so the prince sat in the carriage with his princess and travelled back to the palace in regal style. The wedding party was already underway at the palace when the guards came to the king and told him that a king had arrived from another country. When the young couple arrived, the king soon saw that they were his son and his beautiful bride. They were all amazed to discover that the youngest prince's bride was the most beautiful of them all. Then they all sang and danced and danced and sang until the wedding party was done. And this is where my story ends. Hungarian Folk Tales. Bees on the Train. Once upon a time, there was a large farm. And on that farm lived a man who had relatives from another village who came to visit him one day. They did not want to arrive empty-handed, so they brought him a gift of honey. The honey was quickly eaten with big chunks of fresh bread and was soon all gone. But while they sat eating, they discussed what a fine thing it was to keep bees and how simple it was with such rich rewards. The man could hardly wait for the next farm gathering, where he suggested they should buy bees to make honey. The head farmer agreed and asked if there was anyone willing to work with bees. A man stood up and said he knew all there was to know about bees. He also told them that he knew where to buy bees if that was what they wanted, and everyone cheered with joy. They worked out how much money to give the man, and he set off to buy bees for the farm. He bought as many hives as he could put on a train. Then he had the whole car covered in red cloth and had red clothes and a red hat made to wear. He soon made friends with the bees and spoke to them. He opened the door and the bees came and went as they pleased. When they were halfway back to the farm, the train drove into a sidetrack and the engine left. So the man asked the station master, "Why has the engine gone?" "Because," the station master said, "it was ordered to leave." "How long will the train be in the station?" "Who am I to know that?" "Don't talk to me like that, kind sir, because if I know that the train will be staying here for a whole day long, then I will let my bees out so they can have some air and food." "The train will remain for at least 3 days more," the station master told him. The beekeeper went out and opened up the hives. Come out, children, and have some air. Find food for yourselves and return to your hives in time for the sunset." The bees had barely left when suddenly the station master had an order to start the train again. The beekeeper saw from the top of the carriage that the engine was coming and the train was hooked up, and they sat waiting for the station master's signal to start. The beekeeper ran to complain. "What is all of this? You never told me about this, station master, but I received an order to start the train. But that's impossible. My bees are still in the field. They cost a fortune." "What am I to do with your bees?" the station master replied. "I am a station master and not a beekeeper." "Well, at least leave the carriage with the bees here in the station so it can be coupled up with another train tomorrow." "That's impossible." And with these words, he started the train, which left the station with the bees' carriage. The beekeeper also left in his red clothes. While most of the bees were busy gathering honey, they sent a small party back to see if all was safe with their carriage in the station. Well, when they arrived, they saw that the train had taken their hives away. They returned to the meadow and told the others that their carriage had vanished. So all of the bees flew back to the station, and when they arrived, they found people waiting for a passenger train. Well, the bees thought that these people had stolen their hives, and so they stung them and stung them. The people cried out for help. The station master heard their calls, so he rushed out of his office, and he too was attacked by the angry swarm. His wife heard his cries and opened the window to see what was wrong. And as she opened the window, the bees rushed in and stung her so badly that she cried louder than all the rest. The station master heard this, and he ran upstairs to find out what had happened to his wife. And then he saw that the whole room was filled with bees. The two of them had to hide under a blanket to save their skins, but both were badly stung and their faces sadly swollen. The people waiting for the train all ran back to their homes, but the swarm of bees flew after them. The other villagers heard their shouts and ran out into the street. "Help! The village is being attacked by bees!" And they rang the big bell. The station master eventually came to his senses and he called for the train to be sent back to the station, and it soon reappeared on the platform. The beekeeper, still dressed all in red, climbed on top of the carriage and started to call the bees back. "Come on, children, your hives are here." The bees, hearing their master's voice, gathered together and flew back in an orderly fashion. Those that had survived the bloody battle made their way quietly back into their hives. Then the beekeeper went to see the station master, but he could hardly recognize him. "You deserved whatever happened because you spoke to me so rudely." But the beekeeper eventually forgave the station master, and the beekeeper went back to the farm and laughed when he recalled what had happened that day. The bees soon started to make honey on the farm and made more money than all the farmers and animals put together. From then on, life on the farm was sweet. Hungarian Folk Tales. One-eyed, two-eyed, three-eyed. Once upon a time there lived a woman who had 3 daughters. The eldest daughter had 3 eyes, the middle one had 1 eye, and the youngest had 2 eyes. One day the woman decided to marry off her daughters. A young man arrived seeking a bride, but he wanted to marry the youngest daughter with 2 eyes. But the woman wanted to marry off her eldest daughter first. The woman and the 2 elder girls became very angry with the youngest. They had a goat, and the youngest girl had to watch the goat in the fields every day. The youngest daughter was very sad because her sisters hated her and did not give her any food to eat. She was crying in the fields one day, and the goat asked her, "Why are you so sad, my dear?" "I am sad and cry because my sisters hate me so much and they give me no food to eat." "Don't be sad, I shall help you. Whenever you feel hungry, just tell me, 'Little goat, come here and lay me a table, dear.'" The youngest daughter did as the goat said, and from then on she left for the fields every morning in the best of moods. The sisters soon began to wonder why the youngest one no longer asked for food. And they decided to spy on her. On the first day, the one-eyed daughter went with her 2-eyed sister to the fields to see what she did there all day. Both daughters sat down in the grass. "Lean your head in my lap," said the 2-eyed daughter to her 1-eyed sister. And as she lay down, her sister began to ask, "Are you awake or are you asleep, my sister?" And she kept on asking this until the 1-eyed sister fell fast asleep. Then the 2-eyed daughter said, "Little goat, come here and lay me a table, dear." By the time the 1-eyed daughter woke again, the goat had cleared away all the food, including the table. When she returned home, the 1-eyed daughter reported that she had seen nothing at all. The next day it was decided that the 3-eyed daughter should accompany her 2-eyed sister to the fields. So the 2 girls went out to the fields with the goat. The 3-eyed girl leaned her head into her sister's lap, and the 2-eyed daughter began to recite, "Are you awake or are you asleep, my 3-eyed sister?" Then the 3-eyed daughter closed 2 of her eyes, but her sister did not see that her 3rd eye stayed open, and she began to say, "Little goat, come here and lay a table for me, dear." The 3-eyed daughter pretended to be fast asleep, and when she awoke, she did not tell her sister what she had learned while sleeping. At home, she told everything to her mother and sister. The youngest daughter became very sad when the 3 women decided to kill her pet goat. That night, she dreamt that an old man told her to ask for the hooves and horns of the goat and plant them behind the door without letting anyone see. So that is what she did. By morning, a fine apple tree had grown on that very spot. And no one could pick an apple from its branches except the two-eyed daughter. When the young man came, he asked the one-eyed daughter and the three-eyed daughter to pick him a golden apple from the tree, but neither could do it because the branches always pulled away from their grasp. They made the two-eyed sister hide under the bed, and she was not allowed to come out whenever the young man visited the house. But one day she rolled a golden apple out from under the bed, and the young man asked, "How did this apple roll here? Who rolled it here? I demand to see who did this thing." The two sisters said, "She is a dirty little nothing and you should not waste your eyes on her." Then the young man looked under the bed and saw the two-eyed daughter he loved so very much. He took her by the hand and led her away, saying that she must be his wife and no other. Off they went, and the two sisters stayed at home. If they had not stayed at home, my story would have lasted longer still.